Good afternoon, Glenn. It's so great to see you here today.
It's great to see you tomorrow.
So I've heard that this is the largest conservative convention that
Yes,
we've had.
I just talked to one of the party officials, and this is the largest one on record with the largest number of delegates and the biggest number of people registered so far. Registration is still open, so it's fantastic.
Yeah, good. Congratulations on that.
Thank you.
So I've known you for quite a few years now,
Yes.
and I remember, during the time of the Freedom Convoy that we connected there, and you gave me some very good advice. What was the efforts that you took following the convoy to sort of get to the bottom of what happened?
Well, MP Larry Brock and I served on what was called the Declaration of the Emergencies Act Committee.
Mm-hmm.
And so we spent the better part of 2.5, 3 years following the invocation of the Act to speak with government officials. We brought in Parent Beatty, who wrote the Emergencies Act back, back in the day. We tried to get to the bottom of what information does the government rely on, and it became very clear early on that they were less than transparent, and they certainly didn't want to be accountable.
Mm-hmm. And we can go back even farther. What efforts on behalf, like trying to make those connections while we were in Ottawa? I remember that you were trying to start some conversations between
Yes.
some of the organizers, and
You and I chatted while you were in Ottawa, and I said, so what is it that you guys really want to get, what message do you want to get across? And we talked about, those wanting to hijack your message and not letting them hijack your message.
Yes.
And the other thing is, I asked you, have you had an opportunity to connect with government? And what is it that you wanted? And you said, we just want to be able to tell government officials, it doesn't have to be, in any great venue. It can be, one-on-one, it can be on the phone, it can be any way like that. The impact that the invocation of the Act, because it didn't happen then yet.
Right.
But the whole response to COVID, how it was impacting the livelihoods of Canadians, and that's what people were coming down there for. And so I made effort to talk with several ministers in government at the time. Mendocino was one of them.
Yes.
El Gabra was another one, and I said, listen, in conversation with the convoy leadership, they've said, listen, if we even have just an opportunity to share with you our heart, share with you what it is that we are trying to have you see the impact of your decisions are having on average Canadians, we'll leave. We'll be out of here in 3 days at most. And so I told them that, and I went back to them several times, and they just said, no way, we're not having any conversation, which really disappointed me.
Right.
It told me that, so why not? Whether you agreed with why the convoy was there, whether you agreed with the convoy or not, is not the issue. The issue is why haven't government officials connected with the people who they say are doing this horrible protest? To have a conversation with them. Don't divide. Yeah. Don't call them all sorts of names. Figure out what their issue is and how can we listen to them. And they didn't do that. They just refused to do it, which to me speaks volumes of their, an agenda.
Yeah. And especially considering the fact that in 2021, just a year before, there was the First Nations protesting, and there was vandalism occurring to rail lines and stuff like that. And I remember that there was actual criminal activity happening at these events, and the Prime Minister Trudeau at the time kept expressing it was important to have dialogue. They needed to keep up dialogue. And then shortly, I guess before we ended up in Ottawa, there was the Black Lives Matter protest that happened down there where he went down and took a knee. So it was shocking to us as just regular, everyday Canadian citizens believing in the system that they wouldn't talk to us. So, what do you think the difference was between the protests? Or is that it's speculation, I suppose?
Yeah, I refuse to try and explain why the Liberals do what they do, why they did what they did in this circumstance, Tamara. It could have ended so much differently. I think it was they had dug themselves into a position that was starting to unravel on them, and they just dug in and refused to even say, you know what, maybe we need to listen. Maybe we need to change some things. Maybe what we're doing isn't changing the impact of the health impact of COVID, and maybe it's impacting people's livelihoods, and we need to just listen. I mean, the whole idea of government is supposed to be for the people.
Right.
Right?
Exactly.
Not all of the people.
Yeah.
Right? And that, I think that they lost their way. And one of the most critical things, in my opinion, in talking about the invocation of the Emergencies Act is Canadians, distrust this current government. And if you have a justice system and you have a government who is not trusted, you have a problem. And so I don't think the majority of Canadians are not going to have trust in this current government until it changes.
Correct. Yeah.
And why? Because they've demonstrated they're not to be trusted.
Right. Well, I think what a lot of Canadians would really like to see is just some accountability. I mean, for the way that they handled the pandemic, obviously for the way that they handled the protest also. So, I mean, what do you think, how would a future Conservative government, hold the current government to account for the invocation of the act? Or what are the avenues that...
Yeah, I think, I'm not I don't have an answer to that specifically on they contravened the act. What they did was unlawful. Right. To invoke the Emergencies Act. Justice Mosley said it was unlawful and they breached the charter. He was a federal court. The Federal Court of Appeal, 3 justices said, and they agreed with Justice Mosley. With
some very direct wording, might I add.
They spanked them. Those justices took the Attorney General of Canada and said, you messed up. Basically, you had no authority. Yes. You didn't meet the criteria set out in the Act. Right. There was no national emergency, and so it was the invocation was unlawful based on the requirements that you had to make your assessment on in the Emergencies Act. Section 2 of the Emergencies Act says that you have a national emergency. Yeah. And the justices all said nothing met the threshold of a national emergency. No. So from that perspective, then they went to these extreme measures that they breached the charter of Canadians. And, if you or I were to breach the charter of people, that's a pretty serious step to take, and I think that's part of the frustration constituents have been asking me. Now, so what? So how do you hold a government to account? How do you hold individual ministers to account? And I think, and my response typically is, listen, you hold them account to the ballot box. Right. That's number one. And number two, we've said from the very, very beginning, and I'm going to use a term that Perrin Beatty, who was an MP who actually wrote and crafted the Emergencies Act, said, he told us, he told the committee, the Emergency Act committee, said, your role as a committee is to ensure that no government moving forward will ever invoke the Emergencies Act again under these same circumstances. Mm-hmm. And so as a Conservative government, we take that very, very seriously. Like, it was the existing laws in this country were sufficient to deal with the problems that existed at borders, in Ottawa, whatever it may be. And I don't care what people think about some people are very upset with the protest. Other ones supported it. Doesn't matter the position. Right. There's rules to follow. The law is pretty clear. Law enforcement and the government could have handled it within the current statutes that exist in Canada, and but they didn't. Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. Well, from my personal perspective, I guess it's I just find it a little ironic that I've been found guilty in a court of law. I've been convicted. I am currently serving my sentence, as you well know, 18 months of house arrest for my part in the protest. However, to just see that, the PMO hasn't even issued a statement about the Federal Court of Appeals ruling. I have yet to see a Sean Fraser, the Justice Minister, comment on it whatsoever. So, I find that very curious, and I think I get the feeling that they just sort of want this to all go away and just have everybody forget about it. That's exactly what I think. However, I believe they were so entrenched in a position that I don't know why they would, but they just might appeal this to the Supreme Court, which troubles me.
Well,
right, and it troubles me on a number of fronts. But
yes.
but yeah, for the government to say, we've, for them not to say anything about this, they want it to go away,
Yes.
right? It doesn't suit their the messaging that they want out, that they messed up.
Yeah,
They don't
that's
ever
right.
want to admit
Exactly. And sometimes I just think an apology would go a long ways. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And not to me specifically, but to the Canadian people for breaching their charter rights.
Well, there's so many things that can be learned from the whole COVID pandemic. How we responded as a country, where we failed as a country. That's what government's supposed to do. They're supposed to review those things and say, we did this okay, but we messed up here, and we're not going to do that again. And we've learned from this, but I don't see any of that. There's no acknowledgement that or accountability. It's about accountability.
It is, yeah.
And they haven't really demonstrated that.
You're absolutely right. I think another thing that I was thinking about the other day was, usually after an event of that magnitude, not the protest, I'm talking about the pandemic and the handling of it. You're right. There would be an investigation, there would be an inquiry, or just some sort of process to acknowledge what they did right, acknowledge what they did wrong, and how they're going to fix it in the future. And I find it very curious that we're coming into 4 years following the pandemic, and you're right, we haven't seen any of that yet. So to me, that's a little concerning, and hopefully a conservative government can change that in the future.
There's a lot of things we have to uncover when we form government, and in due course, we certainly intend to. And learning from our COVID experience is certainly, I think, needs to be part of that. Learning from the invocation of the act and recognizing that it was unlawful and how it was done, and then just giving Canadians hope, like listening to them, whether you agree, we shouldn't be dividing people. And the current Liberal government and the previous one were masters at dividing people.
They've turned it into an art, basically.
It shouldn't be about that, right?
So I've got one more question for you, Glenn. We are both Hatters, Glenn and myself, and I was just at the petition signing for the Stay Free Alberta on Wednesday evening, reporting on that, and they had over 2,000 people go through their doors that day. And so I guess my only question is, switching gears here, what would you say to Albertans? What reasons would you give them to remain a part of Confederation and stay a part of the country of Canada?
A number of things, if I may. I completely understand, and I share the frustrations of Albertans who rightfully acknowledge that they are not getting a fair deal in Confederation with this government and with previous governments. And so, and there needs to be an acknowledgement that Alberta is a significant contributor to Confederation, and they need to be treated as such, not just the purse, not just the wallet for the country. Right. And so, I tell folks who ask me that question, I believe that Alberta is better inside a Confederation, and Confederation is better with Alberta in it. And the reason I say that is the things that make Alberta and Albertans successful is our value systems, our common sense, the hard work ethic, and all those things that are successful for Alberta is not what's wrong with Alberta. It's what we need to fix Canada. Right?
Yes.
So that's what I want to see happen is use the skills of our people and the resources of our people in the province to build our country and not divide it. And again, I fully appreciate the sentiment of those who are frustrated. I share in those frustrations. My personal approach and that of our party is to unite Canadians behind a strong, united Canada and not sow division.
And I think, as we saw with the convoy, that's completely doable. And that was one of the beautiful things about the convoy, was the unity that we saw happen across Canada. And so I just want to say thank you for your time today, and thank you for everything that you've done, not just for myself, but for Canadians and all of us that were involved. Thank you.
Thank you, Tamara.
Great to see you.
Thank you for your principled position.
Thank you.
Thank you.